Hey, what's up, guys? Okay, so Eden Zero Chapter 119 is out, and this was actually a very battle-focused chapter. And usually with these kind of chapters, I like to read them 2 or 3 times, take down some notes, gather my thoughts, and then start my review. But when it comes down to this chapter, there wasn't really much to talk about when it comes to the fight between Homura and Mora, as the chapter is even called Homura versus Mora. So the majority of it actually is that fight. But when it came down to it, there wasn't really much to go over when it comes to this fight. In fact, I got most of my talking points for this review from the first few pages that we get of Wise and the Eden Zero crew dealing with Ziggy's virus than I did from the fight between Homer and Mora. And the reason for that is because the fight between those two characters goes down pretty much exactly how I called it should go down a few chapters ago. And in fact, I'm sure a lot of you guys all figured out that when it came down to the fight between those two characters, Mora had the very clear advantage, and the only way for Homer to actually get a victory would be for a one-time, one-trick kill. And that's exactly what ends up happening in the chapter, not to spoil it, but there's not really much to talk about when it comes to that. So yeah, like I said, because of the fact that most of my talking points for this chapter actually do come from the first few pages we get of Wise and the Eden Zero crew dealing with Ziggy's virus on planet Faressa, I'm actually going to talk about the chapter out of order and actually go over the fight briefly in the beginning of the video, and then spend the rest of the video talking about the other plotline. But before I get into any of that, I do want to mention that after reading the chapter 2 times, I did actually come to realize something that I found very fascinating. And that is that I believe that Hiro Mashima actually took Ursa's character from Fairy Tail and actually broke her characteristics down and split them between two different characters. Because like I mentioned in my last review, LZ is literally just Ursa's clone over in the Eden Zero universe. She has the exact same appearance as Ursa, except for that she's wearing a pirate costume. She has the exact same personality as Ursa, as we've seen so far, and as we found out in the last chapter, she has one of Ursa's abilities, the ability to create different armors. So yeah, it's pretty easy to tell that Hiro Mashima gave LZ a lot of Ursa's characteristics. But one thing I realized after reading this chapter is that he also gave some of her characteristics over to Homura. Because one thing we end up finding out in this chapter is that Homura actually has abilities similar to Ursa. In fact, Ursa's other ability, one of Ursa's abilities is to create armor. The other one is to create different swords. And as we found out in this chapter, Homura can not only create her 2 swords that we've seen her use in every fight so far, but she can also create different bladed weapons. So right there we can already see that Hiro Mashima took Ursa's abilities from Fairy Tail and split them between these two characters. And also, I don't know if you know this, but Homura actually also fills the same role over in the main crew of Eden Zero that Ursa did in the main 5 crew of Fairy Tail. Because when you think back to the main crew over in Fairy Tail, Ursa, Natsu, Gray, Wendy, and Lucy, what was Ursa's role on that team? Her role was to be the most skilled fighter. Natsu was very easily the powerhouse on that team. He had obviously the most magical firepower. But when it came to fighting abilities, she was the most skilled one out of all of them. And that's exactly the same kind of role that Homer fills on the Eden Zero crew. Obviously, Shiki is the powerhouse. He's the strongest one when it comes to his abilities. But when it comes to fighting abilities, Homura clearly has the advantage. She's the most skilled and trained fighter on the team. And I mean, the argument can be made that LZ more likely is the more skilled fighter between her and Homura. And if LZ were to ever actually officially join the Eden Zero crew, then yeah, she actually would officially then fill that Ursa role. But because of the fact that she actually has her own crew and she's not actually officially part of the team, she's just mostly someone who actually just helps them out every now and then, she more fills the Guild Arts role as being the strong, overpowered mentor character in the series, while Homura is the most skilled fighter in the series when it comes to their team. And also, Hiro actually gave her 2 other characteristics that are very common with Ursa. One, if you insult or attack her friends, she does not hold back and will use anything in her advantage to defeat you. And 2, when it comes down to it, Homura is the most socially awkward member of the team. And that's exactly the kind of role that Ursa had over in Fairy Tail. She was actually the kind of awkward one, even though she wasn't aware of it. So yeah, that's my character study on Homura in this chapter. Now getting into the actual fight. Alright, so we have Homura and Mora facing off, and it pretty much went how you expected it to go. Like I said earlier, the only way that Homura would actually win this fight because of the fact that she was at a very clear disadvantage. I mean, out of everyone who was there, out of Homura, Shiki, Rebecca, and Wise, Homura was the one who had the least chances of defeating Mora because of his glue ability. Because of the fact that he can turn his body into glue whenever he wants to, and the fact that she uses bladed weapons, her chances of defeating him were very, very slim. So it really did come down to her using a trick that would never work twice on him to defeat him in this fight. And that's exactly what she ended up doing. Because of the fact that she's already surrounded by the fire and the flames, and she's already weak to heat. And couple that with the fact that Mora was actually using the heat surrounding them to basically heat up his glue to turn it into hot glue attacks, which also did more damage to her because again, she's weak to heat. she was on the defensive for most of this fight. And it's actually when Mora has her pushed into a corner and is actually about to defeat her, when he idiotically gives her the idea of how she can actually defeat him. Alright, so he actually mentions in the chapter, that, and I think he actually mentions it multiple times in the chapter, but in this moment she finally clicks in her head. He mentioned the fact that his glue is sticking to her, and this is when she gets the idea, alright, well, let me kick up some dirt and have it stick to him. Because of the fact that his body is glue, anything that touches it instantly sticks to him. So she kicks up the dirt, it sticks to him, and then she uses her claws to basically just pile up dirt and just keep throwing it more, and it's still sticking on his body more and more. She starts cutting up wood chips to stick into it, leaves, pretty much anything she could find, and throwing it at his body so that sticks. Until eventually, he can't move. He has so much stuff piled on top of him that he just can't move anymore. And once she does that and he realizes what she's doing, he thinks, alright, she's going to try to run away now that I can't move. So in that moment when he thinks she's going to run away, he drops the glue effect on his body, letting everything she piled on top of him to fall to the ground. But because of the fact that he dropped the glue effect and nothing's sticking to him anymore, that means his body's no longer made of glue. So in that instant where his body is just a normal body, she strikes and attacks him and takes him out from the fight. Basically giving him an insta-kill attack like I said she would have to do a few chapters ago. And while I really like the fact that Homura was able to quickly think on her feet and actually use this trick to get the advantage and win the fight in an instant one-strike attack, my main problem with this fight is the fact that this win actually did come from a trick that would never work again. Alright, because it actually reminds me a lot of the Luffy versus Crocodile fight over in One Piece, where Luffy defeated Crocodile by, if I remember correctly, it's been a long time since I read the Alabasta arc, but if I remember correctly, Luffy defeated Crocodile by making him wet with water. A trick that if him and Crocodile were to fight again would not work because Crocodile had seen Luffy do it to him before. Same thing that happened with this fight. If Homura and Mora ever had to fight again, her using dust, dirt, wood chips, stuff like that to stick to his body to make him turn into a normal human will never work again because he's already aware of that trick and that weakness of his ability, so he will have countermeasures against it. That being said, obviously, Mora and Homura are never going to fight again because in manga and anime, usually two opponents don't fight each other more than once unless they are each other's personal opponents. But if Homura and Mora ever were to fight again later on in the series, because of the fact that Homura would obviously have gotten a lot stronger, she would have learned new ways to use her abilities, she more than likely would have a better chance of defeating him and wouldn't have to rely on this trick again. But if, say, in the next chapter, Mora were to get up and the two of them were to fight, Homura would not be able to defeat him because of the fact that he would already be aware of this trick, and he would not let her do it again. Alright, so getting into the actual beginning of the chapter, we actually started off with the first 2 pages dealing with the Eden Zero crew who are actually still dealing with the drones attacking the ship, and with Wise and Herman who are actually on their own ship heading into space to deal with the satellite that Ziggy set up that's affecting the androids and robots on planet Foresta, giving them that virus that makes them attack humans. Now, immediately in the beginning of the chapter, we have Laguna, we have Jin, and we have Klein still dealing with the drones, realizing that no matter how many they take out, more and more keep coming. And then eventually, Witch and Sister actually contact them and say, hey, listen, forget about the drones, go into space with Hermit and Wise and help them out with taking out that satellite. We will hold the drones that are showing up here off as long as we can. And initially, the 3 of them are actually, they're fine with going. They're fine with changing up plans and then just all heading into space to protect them. But Wise immediately chimes up and says, hey, we don't need your help. But of course, Hermit tells him, hey, are you crazy? Of course we need our help. The 2 of us had to focus on defeating the satellite or destroying the satellite because this is a very time-sensitive mission. The longer that satellite is up and broadcasting the virus, the longer or the, more likely it's going to end up getting stronger, and the stronger it gets, the more likely it's going to have a chance of taking over us 3 Shining Stars and even Pino and Happy. So we had to take it out as soon as we can. And of course, as soon as we get up there, obviously there's going to be drones protecting the satellite. Which means while we're focused on, rewriting the virus or, getting rid of the satellite, we're going to need people protecting us from the drones, and we can't do both at once. So of course we're going to need the other 3 to protect us. And then after Herman tells Wise, of course, we need their help, we get 3 panels of all 3 characters saying, basically declaring, hey, we are here to help, let us be a part of this. And we get this panel of Wise, and he looks very displeased. He doesn't look happy with the fact that he actually has to accept the help from those 3 characters. And the reason for that is because I don't think Wise is ready to accept them being part of the team. I think everyone else on the team would welcome these guys with open arms. Shiki, obviously, Rebecca wouldn't care that much. Homura obviously wouldn't care. And the 3 Shining Stars already have pretty much welcomed them onto the ship already, so they don't really care at all either. But when it comes to Wise, he still is reluctant to do it, and I think it's because of the fact that they were contracted or at least working with Drek and Joe, someone who actually has a very strong hatred towards, because of the fact that he blames Drek and Joe for killing his mother. So the fact that they worked with him, I think, is the reason why he's very reluctant to accept them as part of the team. It's kind of like what happened with Gajeel over in Fairy Tail when he first joined the guild. Everyone was very reluctant to officially let him join and actually, take him as part of the family. But as time went on and he actually, proved himself and actually worked hard to gain their trust and their friendship, eventually everyone actually welcomed him as a full-on member of the family. And I think the same thing's going to end up happening in this. Eventually, once Laguna, Klein, and Jin officially declare their decision to become official members of the Eden Zero crew, Wise is going to be the only one to have any real pushback for that. But eventually, as he sees them actually interact with the crew more often and actually help out, he will eventually come to actually see them as friends like the rest of them will. Now, when it comes to Wise and Hermit's plan to rewrite the virus, honestly, by the end of the arc, they have to, because there's really only two options for them. If they're going to eventually move on from Planet Foressa, they either have to abandon it and just let the robots do what they're already doing, which is enslaving and attacking humans, or they have to fix the virus. So obviously, because of the fact that Shiki's not going to allow them to basically just let the robots do what they're doing, he's going to want to fix them without destroying the robots, they have to eventually get rid of the virus. So of course they're going to do that, but before they actually rewrite the virus, I predict that at least 2 members of the Shining Stars are going to be affected by it. And those 2 members are going to be either Hermit and Witch, or Hermit and Sister. And the reason why I say that is because of the fact that obviously Hermit, her being affected by it will actually give Wise someone to fight against while he's trying to, rewrite the virus, which could add drama and suspense to the situation that's going on with them. And then when it comes down to Sister and Witch, obviously one of them being affected by the virus and the other one not, would force them to fight in order to protect Shiki and the gang, which will obviously give them a very interesting fight for the arc. But anyway, guys, that's pretty much all I have for the chapter. That's pretty much all there is for the review. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, drop me a like, subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. Comment down below your thoughts and theories, and I will catch you guys next time. Peace.